Welcome to the Feds, insiders bringing accountability, integrity, and reform to a broken bureaucracy. At Feds for Freedom, we value constructive dissent and healthy debate. The views and opinions shared in today's episode are those of the speaker alone and do not express the views or opinions of the U.S. government or any other employer.
Welcome back to this week's episode of The Feds. I am Stephanie Weidle. Today is our 100th episode. I want to thank everyone who has listened so faithfully to this podcast. Your shares and support have made it possible for us to continue this platform, giving a voice to those on the inside who see government overreach and are willing to act to preserve our liberties. Before starting this week's discussion, I encourage you to like, comment, subscribe to, and share these podcast episodes. We are excited to share that our upcoming conference is at Patrick Henry College in Northern Virginia on October 10th and 11th. It will be a day-and-a-half event starting on Friday early afternoon and ending on Saturday evening. Get ready to meet in person some wonderful speakers, including some podcast guests, who share our mission to curb government overreach and to educate the American people on what they can do about it. We hope to have a great turnout of college students who are the next generation of federal employees, doctors, lawyers, and military service members. Please visit our website where you can donate towards our mission and towards the continuation of this podcast and our conferences at fedsforfreedom.org. This week, I am joined by our very own Jim Erdman, federal employee and co-founder of Feds for Freedom. 2 weeks ago, Feds for Freedom secured a historic settlement with the Department of Justice, concluding our 4-year lawsuit challenging the legality of the COVID-19 federal employee vaccine mandate. Jim, thank you so much for joining me today. It's really good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Would you take us back to that moment in 2021 when you and Marcus were in the office with Trent McCotter, our lawyer with Boyd & Gray PLLC? What made you want to launch this lawsuit?
Well, I'll take a quick step back. We had already filed one lawsuit in September of 2021 through Federal Practice Group, and it was in the D.C. Court District. And that's good. We needed to file that. We needed to get something out there. But we had grown in just a short amount of time. And so this lawsuit was filed in December of 2021. And in that short amount of time, I think we went from a few hundred people that were part of Feds for Freedom all the way up to a few thousand. And by the time we had the injunction, I don't remember the exact numbers. We peaked at about 9,500 members of Feds for Freedom, but maybe 3,000, 4,000. It's hard to recall. But we knew we needed to start filing multiple suits focused on different issues. So, the Federal Practice Group lawsuit was focused on employment law and employment violations and the Administrative Procedure Act. The Boyd & Gray lawsuit was focused on the unconstitutional overreach.
Yes.
And so we definitely needed to get that out somewhere. We had a whole bunch of new plaintiffs that were part of the 5th District. And so we filed there. And so, we had been trying to get a hold of Boyd & Gray Associates for a couple months. Marcus managed to get contact with, I believe it was Trent. I'm trying to remember who. And so he said, hey, you want to come by the law firm and have a discussion? And turned out I was picking up my son from his he had one of the few preschools that was still open. So grabbed my son, drove over to the law firm, sat there with Marcus and Trent and hashed out what we were going to do. So it was a matter of trying to get as many lawsuits out on as many of the issues that were important to fighting this. So the unconstitutional overreach was one big one.
Yeah, that's a pretty major one. So would you talk about the timeline of the lawsuit from its inception at that moment and then all the way to the settlement that we just got?
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about how much time and equity, sweat equity, was put into getting this thing up and running. And it goes all the way back to disparate groups of people from a bunch of different agencies and departments getting together in September right after it happened. But once we got a hold of Boyd and Gray and Associates, we knew we had a top-notch law firm that really could litigate this all the way to the end. And so December, we get this thing filed. In January, I think it was January 21st of 2022, we got a nationwide injunction for the entirety of the staff federal workforce. And I think there's a couple things on that we should probably go over again. We actually filed a lawsuit in support of both staff federal government employees and contract employees because and I'm going to forget which districts, but I think it was the 11th district and maybe the 6th district. There was separate lawsuits out there that had already been filed on behalf of contractors, and they had made some pretty good gains. And so the judge in the case, I believe it was Judge Brown, don't quote me on that, said, hey, listen, we don't need to worry about the contractor piece. We're going to focus on the staff federal government employees. So that was the injunction. In April, there was so DOJ appealed. Which also it's ironic too. The nationwide injunction just had a Supreme Court ruling just recently saying that pretty much striking down the use of nationwide injunctions in the future. So we benefited from it, but nationwide injunctions have been used by activist judges to really wreak havoc. So in this case, it was warranted. And it was warranted because, and I'll focus on this a little bit, just because I think it's pertinent to things that are happening legally these days. It was important to get a nationwide injunction because the overreach or the mandate was for the entirety of the federal workforce, which sits across every state and territory across the whole United States. So, that injunction was commensurate with the amount of overreach. So, and I don't know, people could argue that. We benefited from it. Well, DOJ appealed, and I believe it was April of 2022. We had drawn a 3-judge panel in the appeal. Somehow, we had drawn 2 of the least supportive judges you could have drawn from the 5th district, and we got lucky. Even though the injunction was overturned, the dissent from the lone judge in support of what we were doing was strong enough that we were able to appeal this for an en banc ruling. So that's one thing. But it also it left a leeway for our legal arguments. So, and that was April of 2022. Oh, and it also left the injunction in place until after the appeal was, whether or not we were going to get that en banc ruling or not, left it in place that entire time. So we were in waiting game, and so everybody was still in limbo. Like all the federal workers knew that there's a potential, in fact, there was a potential that it would be permanently reversed and things would move forward, but also there was a distinct potential that we might not even have the case heard at the en banc ruling, because it's extraordinarily rare for all of the judges to get together and it's rare to get the opportunity to do an en banc hearing. And just to remind everyone, an en banc hearing is where all of the judges from that circuit court, they come together and they hear the case. So I think that was 17 judges, and it's like a 1 in 600 something odds that'll get approved. We got it approved. We had the en banc ruling, and some really important case law came out of that en banc ruling, and there was 2 things. There was one which was a vaccine mandate in and of itself is legally defined harm. And that's important because many of the cases that were filed in 2021 and 2022, they were thrown out immediately. They were thrown out because they're like, well, have you really been harmed? I mean, you haven't been fired yet. To many of us, that's sort of absurd. It's like, hey, listen, yeah. I mean, the threat of being fired is almost as bad. We've got families, we've got mortgages. The other piece that came out of that, in addition to, hey, that's legally defined harm, federal workers got, case law established that we were allowed to file in court prior to finishing up administrative procedures. So most of the time when federal government employees want to sue their employer, you really can't. You have to use administrative processes that are in place, like the EEO process, OSC, what is that? Office of Special Counsel, MSPB, and those are important processes. But what happens is you go through all of them, and then you can go to court. Well, in this case, they said no. In this case, it's a bodily autonomy issue, and you can go to court. I'm going to keep things moving. It did end up going to the Supreme Court. We had got a big win, and we were just waiting to hear the merits of the case. And at this point, the pandemic was winding down, and so DOJ appealed to the Supreme Court, but they only appealed on the technicalities of the case. Standing, can federal government employees go directly to court, and issues that did not touch on the substance. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court, and this was in December of 2023, right? 2023. It's been a lot of years. They came down and agreed that they would moot the case. So we were disappointed. We were disappointed because we wanted to get to the substance of it, but it also washed away the lower court rulings, which established case law that we thought was important. So Supreme Court said, hey, Fifth Circuit, go ahead and tell the Fifth District that it's time to make this case moot. To our surprise, the Fifth Circuit sat on the case, did not conduct the administrative steps necessary to moot the case until after the election this year. And so they finally sent it down to the district court, and the district court was going to moot the case, but our lawyers began negotiations with DOJ on what could be done, and that's how we ended up with the settlement that we currently have. Not a ruling, but a settlement.
Yes. So let's talk about the implications of the Feds for Freedom DOJ settlement. It was signed on August 7th, and this is a monetary settlement as well as an agreement to scrub vaccination status within personnel records, scrub exemption requests, and noncompliance with the mandate information. And they also agreed to a new policy stating all this cannot be used against an employee in any way with hiring or promoting or anything like that. So what is the DOJ actually saying in this? Like, what we at Feds for Freedom what are we taking out of this?
Okay. Well, there's two halves to that question. You want an answer to what does it mean that we've got OPM giving out guidance, and what does it mean in terms of the financial settlement? There's overlap there, and the overlap is it's a tacit agreement that, yes, hey, listen, the vaccine mandate was probably illegal. At a minimum, they're saying, something went wrong with the vaccine mandate, and while we could just moot this case and not say anything about it, we've determined that in this case, it's probably better to find a way so that the things that were overreach are taken care of administratively. So it's a settlement, not a ruling. So that's the first thing. I think let's start with what it means for federal government employees, and then we'll go to the financial side.
Okay.
Does that sound okay?
Yes.
Okay. So what does this mean for employees? I think everybody here would have loved to have the federal government come back and say, Yes, that vaccine mandate where we decided you're going to take an experimental injection and you don't have any choice. We would have liked them to say, that sounds pretty illegal to us.
Right.
We're not going to get that. And there's a variety of reasons why I think DOJ came down. I don't know. That's up to them to make that calculus. But I have a feeling it is related to ongoing litigation in federal court for different cases and civil court. Mm-hmm. It opens them up for quite a bit of loss.
Yes.
And you could say, well, so what? I thought this was about justice, and I say that. But in this case, we did get something out of it. I think there's also the possibility that there's a calculus in that, you could open yourself up to a whole bunch of future litigation from people who never really wanted the vaccine, but, they've got the golden handcuffs. They've got family, and that's not a bad thing. You have to take care of your family, and they're being told, sorry. So for federal government employees, it's a tacit acknowledgement that you suffered for all the wrong reasons. And, it also means that to get to accountability, which is what we talk about, this isn't accountability. This is a step in the right direction, but it also means just like the rest of this fight, nothing's easy. And it's going to require responsibility from individuals who would like to see accountability. And our organization is hoping that we can help ensure that we continue to stomp towards that, accountability and make sure that we can help hold the government accountable for, okay, you've given us this. We're going to help our members first. Anybody who wants to join, help them get that accountability they seek. And we can talk about that, like what that means in a minute. I think the other half, you mentioned the financial settlement. The financial settlement is important because, it acknowledges that Feds for Medical Freedom, now Feds for Freedom, put a lot of work into trying to push this to the very end. And they're saying, here's some money to get you towards that accountability goal. Mm-hmm. And, we intend, and we'll talk about some of the specifics of what we want to do, we intend to apply what's left because there's still a financial obligation to the law firm, a significant financial obligation to the law firm that we still owe them. So, and this is for the legal fees. So we're going to use the financial settlement judiciously to continue to push forward accountability. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
Yep. There have been a lot of questions surrounding the destruction of the personnel information. Is it destroying important evidence of government unlawfulness, and will it hurt or help ongoing EEO cases? So let's just unpack this. Is it destroying evidence of unlawful behavior?
Okay. Yes, it is destroying information inside someone's personnel file, but it is not destroying evidence unless you can opt out. And the opt-out is the important piece here.
Yes.
Let me break this down.
And also explain what is the difference between personnel records and other government records. Go ahead.
So I think the thing everyone needs to keep in mind is there's something called the Federal Records Act. You can't just destroy records. Okay, there has to be if you've made a federal record, it requires probably legislation to get records completely destroyed. In this case, OPM is providing guidance specifically about what is in someone's personnel file. Those are not complete records. Those are, hey, individual, you were impacted. It was wrong, and we don't want to see you impacted in the future as a result of something that was probably overreach. So we're going to take it out of your file if that's what you want. Mm-hmm. You can opt out, and that was part of the negotiation process. We want the opt-out because from a practical level, there is ongoing EEO complaints. We helped organize, I think, 17 when we started. I think there are still 14 EEO complaints working their way, class action EEO complaints. So sorry, I should clarify that, through EEOC and federal court right now. We can't have the personnel records of the people who are part of those class actions destroyed because that is part of their evidence.
Right.
So they need to opt out until which time that administrative action or that federal lawsuit, because after EEOC, it can get kicked out to the federal lawsuit. You opt out until that litigation is done. That you need that. You need the stuff that's in your personnel file because if it's gone, you can't keep it. Now, you obviously will probably have records
Yes.
of your own. I know that most of the class action EEOs that got started in 2021 and 2022 that Feds for Freedom helped facilitate and up until, I don't know, a year ago, we were paying for, a year plus ago, we gave, the lawyers that were involved in that gave advice about how to keep records. A lot of people have their record given to them so that they've got that packet. Don't lose that. And I would say that they probably want to opt out. We are still on that opt out. We are still working through, because it hasn't been laid out by OPM how exactly one opts out. We don't know that process yet, so we have to wait for OPM to give that guidance. We are also going to give some very specific guidance for those who are interested on how to make sure that you, the individual, you, the class agent for a class action, are comprehensive in your opt-out.
That's right.
Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me just ask before we go further. Religious exemption requests were not processed for 3.5 years. Has the government up to this time been breaking the law by holding that information and not processing it?
So I'm not a lawyer. So let me just
We know,
caveat
Jim.
this.
You're very competent with legal things.
Well, I'm a jailhouse lawyer. I think what we need to keep in mind is when you're talking about the religious accommodations, those all fall under Title VII, RFRA. There's a whole lot of existing laws out there on how your religious accommodation is supposed to be handled. What I can say about the religious accommodations and the legality of sitting on an accommodation, we've seen in federal court now, and I believe the Navy SEAL suit that came out, that was related to a failure to accommodate. So certainly, if it looks like there's a willful intent to not accommodate, and it's not based on some failure of the, we'll call them applicant or plaintiff to make their religious accommodation case, well then yeah, it's illegal. But them sitting on the documentation, I think that's a matter of legal interpretation. What is illegal? What isn't legal? That hasn't quite made its way through all the federal courts. I believe, my personal opinion is, if someone puts forward a religious accommodation prior to COVID, it was a very simple process. Let's say you had some religious objection to whatever it is, and I'm blanking on a good example right now, but you would normally go to your supervisor and say, "Hey, listen, I can't do overtime work on Saturday, whatever it is, whatever it is.
You don't want to work on Sundays.
Don't want to work on Sundays, and it's because of my religious beliefs, and so I can't be called in then." They are supposed to do the supervisor will do an assessment of, what is the impact on the workforce? Is it absolutely necessary? Like, did that person say that they could work Sundays when they first were hired and then came back and said, no? What's the impact? It was a fairly simple process. Only during COVID, they decided, well, we're going to change it. We're going to make a committees. We're going to have a whole bunch of questions that are supposed to divine whether or not you have sincere religious beliefs or sincere philosophical beliefs that are part of your worldview. It's a very strange bit of timing to do it just during COVID.
Right.
It's also, I think it could be considered illegal depending on which court it lands in.
Well, the settlement is certainly a win for the freedom movement, but like we've said, it doesn't inherently have that accountability piece, and it's going to take more work on the part of individuals and Feds for Freedom to get that accountability.
That is correct.
And one way to do that is to, one, if you opt in, which that's the default, you opt in to getting your records scrubbed, your personnel records scrubbed, then we can make sure by putting in FOIA requests, you can make sure, members, by putting in FOIA requests, Privacy Act requests, and also expecting to see certificates of destruction.
Those are all important.
So this is an opportunity to make sure that this is actually done, because we know that often it is not done.
Yeah.
But another piece is if you opt out, like say, okay, I have an ongoing EEO case. I don't want to have everything destroyed like you were talking about. Is this an opportunity to discover what lists people have been put on?
I think we definitely need to treat this as an opportunity. It fast forwards the processing. I think many agencies and departments are, I'm not saying they're changing, but I am saying that they are realizing with this OPM guidance, and even the statement that came out from OPM said, hey, listen, we might have gone too far. I don't remember the exact words, but it is an opportunity. Yeah. It's only an opportunity if we capitalize on it. And I know that's a stupid statement, like, of course, if you don't do anything, then it's not an opportunity. But, like this whole process, we would have loved to have hit the easy button. The judge comes back and says it's illegal. That would have made it much easier for us. But like everything else, we've decided we need to take on a little more work to get at accountability. So for the individual, once you opt out, there's more that you can do to get at the information that will lead to accountability. Privacy Act FOIAs. We are going to be putting together some templates with Feds for Freedom on what those need to look like so you can get at all the information. I'm certain many individuals across the federal government were put on insider threat lists. I find that abhorrent, especially for folks that have been serving their country faithfully. Don't know if it happened. It's a guess, but I think this is the perfect time to begin asking those questions of your employer. Who knows what other lists you've been added to. And a Privacy Act FOIA is a good tool you can use to identify exactly what lists you've been put on. We just need to break through with once one or two from every agency or department start getting data back, and they're like, oh, well, I do know we were put on insider threat list because DHS put it out publicly that you could be considered an insider threat if you had vaccine hesitancy.
That's right.
It makes my brain hurt. It's dumb.
Yeah.
It's just, I could criticize it. That's a waste of time. What isn't a waste of time is we will be putting templates out so that individuals even those who are not part of Feds for Freedom, we really like you to come join the organization, become a member so that we can help you get at that information. We're probably going to need to bring on a little more legal help because there's going to be questions. And this is a Privacy Act FOIA is a legal question. And a lot of times, hate to say, I know it's surprising, but the federal government protects their information. And sometimes, even when you put in a FOIA, you have to litigate to get that information out of your government.
How long has Feds for Freedom been waiting for its DOD FOIA?
Okay, I could give you, so there's State Department's the worst offender so far.
Okay.
I think that was one of our first FOIAs put out. We still let's see, we filed that in 2021 for a variety of issues, and we still don't have an answer from them. So, like, I'm laughing about it, but it's still frustrating.
Yeah.
The FOIA process is in place to allow citizens to get information from the federal government.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a matter of, well, we filed it. It's past the statutory amount of time, so now we got to sue.
Yes.
So if there was ever a time that the federal government would be more positively predisposed towards getting you your information quickly, it will be when OPM puts out guidance saying that, hey, we might have gone too far.
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity.
Yes.
It's only an opportunity if you act. And if you act, the promise is Feds for Freedom is going to stand behind you and help you marshal it through the process. We've got hundreds of people who have already filed Privacy Act FOIAs over the last few years. And I'm not giving legal advice. I'm just telling you we can help you with that process.
Yes.
So, and I hope I've talked so long, I'm not sure I answered the question.
I think you did. And also, this is not the time to not act.
Yeah.
This is not the time to just complain.
Yeah. I mean, I think, one of the frustrating things, and it's frustrating for everybody, and I've got a lot of sympathy for these folks who have been fighting this fight for almost 4 years. It's easy to get black-pilled and assume the worst of everything, and you got a lot of keyboard warriors out there who just want to talk about how bad things are. We get it. You're right. Guess what? This isn't accountability. It's as close as we could get, and we have a path forward on. Okay, you want accountability? They didn't give us the easy button. Here's how you do it. And I think, if you just want to check out and you're like, listen, the system's too broken, I personally think you're making a mistake. I think that, as someone who believes that even if institutions have failed, we give up on institutions to our own detriment. You got to know what is going to fill the space. If you're going to like just say, oh, we should just blow it all up and screw it, we're done. I'm getting out of the system. I don't know. It's a lot of risk. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of risk, and I believe that institutions. I hope that if we stay invested and stay focused on making improvements, or making improvements by getting rid of parts of it, the parts that don't work. But yeah, sorry, I've talked too long on it. What I'm saying is you have to act. If you don't act, well, then it's on you.
Yes. Have these records been directly used to retaliate against individuals?
Well, yeah. I mean, 100% yes.
And we
have many examples. Yes. There's one former board member who I'm not going to go into the details, but I think that individual has suffered a great deal. And at least two. And
it's not just in the past. We have one former board member who is currently being retaliated against. Yeah. Relentlessly.
And the thing is, it would be less severe if there weren't this personnel action that was taken against him during COVID. So now he's got a strike against. Look at that! I'm starting to narrow this down, but this individual has a strike against him, and it's a strike that was undeserved. This was an individual who had sincere, conscientious dissent, and he was treated in a manner that was targeted and retaliatory, mm-hmm. and I mean vicious. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all heard it during COVID, and I don't want to rehash, but we've all heard colleagues, said they should just die. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's disappointing to me, the behavior during COVID, and I'm not willing to just forgive and forget. I can get to forgiveness maybe.
There
I'm not
should
gonna
not
forget.
be forgetfulness.
No,
Forgetfulness.
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 No, there shouldn't.
Over
There
this.
shouldn't. So, yeah, there's been retaliation. So it's important that those people opt out so they can keep those records and get to that point where they can get accountability. And we definitely want to help people get there.
And then they can opt in at any point
Yeah.
to eventually scrub all of it.
Once the if you're involved in an administrative action, I'm not even talking about if you're part of the federal government Feds for Freedom group. I'm talking about if you've got an EEO out there and it was related to COVID, or you've got MSPB or OSC or any of this and it was related to COVID, opt out, do your Privacy Act FOIA, get a little more information, and start pushing towards that accountability. And once you've got that information, once you've got a little more detail on what exactly happened to you, and then you can take some more action that hopefully will get accountability. And then you can opt in, and they'll at any time, and you can have the records removed. I mean, I think there's a whole bunch of us who view our disciplinary action as a badge of honor. I'm still on the fence if I'll ever opt in. So
I can understand. Well, Jim, I am so excited about this settlement. It is I think, a great conclusion to a wild ride for this organization and this lawsuit.
well, I also think it's a great discussion for the 100th episode, Stephanie.
It sure is.
And since it is the 100th episode, I think you deserve a few questions as well.
Uh-oh. I actually have not been interviewed yet.
Well, you're in luck. I'm here to help.
Okay.
I'm here to help.
You're here to help.
So, you were, dogged in the beginning. When we started this podcast, it started 100 episodes ago. But, you were doing this without any experience, without, you have experience on stage, and you have
it's different,
it is, you have a presence. But I'm going to start with, when you started, did you realize how much work this would
No.
entail? And what have you sort of learned about this whole endeavor that you think everyone should understand about sort of being the face of it? Actually, not sort of, being the face of Feds for Freedom.
Well, let's see. I definitely did not know how much work this would be. I remember being on the WNOD trail late summer of 2023, and Marcus calling and asked, would you kind of be the director of this endeavor? And I said, I don't know. Guess I need to think about it. Now, just remember that when my husband asked me to marry him, I also said, I don't know. Let me go home and think about it. So, I had to think about it. I knew it was going to be some work, and I remember going home and thinking, I don't even know what to do.
Well, your husband is a saint, by the way.
It's wonderful. So I talked with Scott a little bit about it, and we thought, well, why not? This is definitely, I remember when you put out the call for a Feds for Freedom podcast, I immediately, I held my breath. I was like, this is exactly what has been missing, a voice for the federal employees, because the military has had a voice. The medical community has been given a voice by various networks, but the federal employees were lost in the mix. And often the Feds for Freedom name was not even brought up in articles. I mean, Fox News to this day, even with the settlement article that they put out, they didn't mention Feds for Freedom's name.
I've noticed that with a few of these outlets.
Right?
They're thanking President Trump for making this happen. And I'm like,
There you go.
I don't know. There was a bunch. Yeah.
Right.
Good point.
So federal employees really needed a voice, and that was the goal with this podcast. So it was a very interesting couple months kind of getting our feet under us, and then all of my co-hosts left me, and there I was by myself. But it was fine. It worked out. But I have learned a ton doing this. I think mostly realizing how bad the things are, how bad the military is right now. That it really has been heartbreaking seeing that.
Yeah, they suffered. I mean, don't be wrong. Federal government employees definitely suffered through COVID, but it was a different animal over there. When you're talking about you were just flicked out and told time to go, it was a different thing. You've got 8,000 soldiers who were departed and 80,000 that were affected.
And I think that is what happened as a result of how bad things have gotten in the leadership of the military, where it was trampling on the rights that they did not give up when becoming a service member. They didn't give up their like religious freedoms. So I think realizing that has been quite a shocker.
Well, I was in the military a long time ago, and I have a soft spot for these folks who are put on the front lines, literally. And so, there was help early when we started this organization. There was a lot of military folks who signed up to try and be part of our organization. We have a bunch of military folks. I think one of the great things about the podcast is we couldn't offer the kind of legal support we wanted to, and we've brought, there's another board member that's been brought on who helps us with that. But you provided a face for them, so they knew that we were doing our best to address their issues as well. So thank you. You've had a ton of the military folks on.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask another question.
Oh, okay.
I got a few questions there, Steph. The podcast has grown, and we've covered a lot of different topics, and we of course cover the vaccine mandate. That's part of it. But what other topics do you think you found most interesting over these last 100 episodes that you think maybe really deserves some additional attention?
I think anything talking about the deep state is really important for people to understand that this is not, like I've said before in some of these podcasts, looking at the world through this political lens. Now, I grew up in this area, in the D.C. area, and everyone looks at the world through a political lens. We are taught to do that in this area. It's very Republican and Democrat. And for average Americans like myself to understand that is a facade, and we are told to think of politics and the world in that way. That has been very eye-opening. So anything deep state related, I think is worthy of great attention.
So maybe if I can, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're talking about is maybe there's a need to look at this. Let's not look at this from a political standpoint, because that doesn't help anybody. Let's look at this from maybe a constitutional standpoint,
right,
or a legal standpoint,
right, or
a moral or religious standpoint. And
yes,
if we all did that, I think we might.
We would not have been here. I think in a way we would not have been here if it hadn't been so polarized. But
and I think that's a great point, because for federal government employees, we're not supposed to be. We are supposed to be apolitical. We are supposed to be focused on what is legal, what is constitutional, and I think that is exactly what federal government employees need to hear. This is not about politics. This is about doing what's right, even when nobody could see or ever find out. Right.
Do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. But I think something else that needs to be honed in on, a topic I find interesting, is the Make America Healthy Again movement. And that's kind of how I got into this, was, seeing vax injury in my own family, and then realizing, oh, well, maybe my husband has all these allergies because he was vaccine injured himself, and looking back at the records and looking at, oh, well, it's not even just vaccines, it's the environment, like pesticides, it's also food. And so I think, we go to these Feds for Freedom parties, and you look at the food that is actually provided, and and you think that food that people bring, and you think, oh, I've thought several times, ooh, we need to have more Maha episodes on here.
Yeah.
Like maybe cook our own beans and put pigs ear in them.
Those chocolate chip cookies are really tasty.
Well, okay, let's make them in a different way.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we can work on that's a work.
And it's something I'm working on because I've had less time now that I'm doing this. So we're all.
I will say from a personal standpoint, I found some of the science. Well, I should go back because when we first started the podcast, my idea for Feds for Freedom, I said, what you should do? It should be just a science podcast. You should just focus on like immunology, and everyone's like, hey, Jim, go back to your corner.
I remember you bringing that up, and I immediately was shaking my head no.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't have played out as well.
We would have ended at episode 5.
Probably.
Maybe 2.
Yeah, it wouldn't have gone down. Let me tell you how the mitochondria work. Okay, so I personally like the science ones. Mm-hmm. So I've found I've been most interested when we've had people covering topics of scientific interest. That's me personally, but I'm hoping that everybody has their own interests, and I think that we've had some varied guests that have been in some cases controversial. But who was? Oh, actually, I don't want to put you on the spot. Who was your favorite? I think person to talk to, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot. Or let's say that's hard because there's a lot of good people.
There are really. I mean, I love all of my guests.
Sorry, whose story did you find most really engaging that for you hit close to home? And I'm putting you on the spot because I didn't give you any of these questions in advance.
Well, so I would say probably Rob Green.
Yeah.
And not only his story, but his family story. Mm-hmm. I think that really, he was very bold about what he did, and he stood his ground, and he's continued to face some retaliation. And so I would say his really impacted me. And I think also that it really opened my eyes to the systemic issue we have in education, especially education of the military, even federal employees. Mm-hmm. They need constitutional training. But I have to think more because I've had some really great guests on.
There's 100 episodes.
I know, right?
Only a handful of repeats. So
that's right.
So I guess I don't want to belabor this too much, but you have a question you ask at the end of every episode where you're like, what can the average person do to make things better, to get past the corruption? And so I'm not going to ask you that question.
Oh, no.
I'm going to ask you, what has been the range of answers you've heard? Like if you had to bucket these answers, what are you hearing over 100 episodes from a lot of people, from a lot of different perspectives? What's the general answer you're getting?
So many people say stand up where you are and do something, get going.
So individual responsibility.
I think one actually said and it was the React 19, the first React 19 person I had on said, just listen to people. And because that is not what she received when she was vaccine injured. She needed someone to listen.
So treat everybody like a future ally.
Treat everyone like a future ally. That's right. I've gotten, so stand up, listen, get involved with your local community. That has been probably number 2, get involved with local community. And I would say those are the top 3. There have been a couple interesting ones in there. I'd have to go back. We've talked about compiling these for some time.
We did. I think Matt Strickland had a bunch of he was one that impacted me. But I'm not going to end on Matt Strickland. I'm actually going to end on you. I think one of the silver linings of this whole mess, and I'm going to speak from a personal standpoint, is being able to be invited into your family. You have a beautiful family, big heart.
Thank you, Jim. I cannot tell you what a different life I am having than I thought I would, like hanging out with government employees and ones that I really admire greatly. So I admire you, and I admire Marcus and all of the other co-founders of Feds for Freedom. I am honored that you want to get to know my family and all of the other Feds for Freedom members in the area. You have a big heart, Jim, and we have so appreciated bringing you into our family and helping in any way we can. You have helped us so much.
Well, we'll agree that this has been a great experience for, there's always silver linings. So it's been an opportunity to get to know a whole new set of friends that I don't think we would have had prior to all this.
Oh, yeah. And oh, my goodness. Well, for us, it was starting out with the mandate, and even before the mandate, realizing I even said to Scott 9 months before, Scott is my husband, 9 months before the mandate came out, I said, I think they're going to hold your job to get you to take this shot, Scott. And he said, oh, we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. And then that summer I said, I think they're going to do this, Scott. And he said, well, they have lawyers for that. They know they can't do that. So I was amazed to see him stand up the way that he did. And I remember praying for courage to even go to the store without a mask on and be run through the store. And he got all of it at one time. And I'm thankful for Feds for Freedom because I don't think we could have done it ourselves.
Well, I think we're in agreement. And I think that's a perfect way to end the 100th episode. Thanks, Steph.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks so much for coming on with me. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe to, and share our podcasts. I'll see you next week.